Hi, everybody. It's me, Virginia. Welcome back to the Living on the Verge podcast. So, I've had some lunch. I had a tomato, feta, avocado, and red onion salad along with a small ribeye steak, and it was delicious. Today is May 23rd, 2025, 5/23/25. It's important because we are in the midst of a phenomenon which is known as a date palindrome. It is a rare sequence where the numbers are the same forwards as backwards. It goes from 5/20, May 20th, through 5/29, May 29th. And if you do 5/23/25 and you read it backwards, it's still 5/23/25. So that's a fun fact, right? And another fun fact, May 31st will be 4 years that I quit smoking cigarettes. And I am so happy that I have never looked back. But I have an app on my phone that tracks my quit date, and I just came across it today, trying to kind of clear my phone off. And I can't believe how much money I saved. It tracks like their days and then also how much money you would have saved. But this is based on the cost of cigarettes 4 years ago. And it says I have saved over $16,500. So my guess is that if you adjust for the cost of cigarettes today, it would be closer to $20,000. So yay me, what a good savings. I want to talk about the Real Housewives of Atlanta for this episode, and I'm going to get us all caught up. We are in the midst of a Memorial Day weekend trilogy, and this is episode 2. And we are going to work our way toward our new format, which is launching next week. And so for the moment, we are going to put all our focus on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. We're going to start off where we left off, episode 9. So the girls are talking about how things went in Nashville, and it wasn't good. They're kind of filling Cynthia in, and then Cynthia invites everyone to the Juneteenth Bailey Q. So she originally has this barbecue on July 4th, where she invites everyone over to Lake Bailey to celebrate, and she calls it a Bailey Q. But given that Juneteenth has now become a national holiday, she decided to change it and make it a Juneteenth Bailey Q. Callie has a ridiculous birthday party for her multicolored dog Cha-Cha. I don't know if this is a hot take and if I'm in the minority, but I don't like this. The colored dogs, is that a thing, everybody? Do we have to keep it a thing? I don't know. First of all, whatever with how the dog looks, but to spend that kind of money on a puppy party, it was a little bit over the top. But I guess, Kelly gets to do what she wants to do with her money. And then Porsha brings PJ a puppy. And PJ's super cute, right away. Her focus just pivots and she's just kind of obsessing over the puppy. And so Porsha tells us that it's a good time for her, that Porsha is a little distracted and she thought it would be a good distraction for PJ, and also that it's about that time when kids start asking for a sibling and she's in no position to provide that. So she decides that she's going to get PJ a puppy. While Porsha tells her mom and her sister about the conversation on the phone where she found out that Dennis was filming with Drew. And they, kind of ask about how it went down. And she admits to doing a lot more than she did when she was approached and when they talked about it before. She admits that she called her some names. She says, not Big Bird. And I don't know, Porsha, I'm confused by your behavior this season, but let's get back on track. So she says that she doesn't want Dennis backdooring housewives. And Porsha, say less. Just say less. Shamea goes to Surrogacy, Miracles, and Consulting to talk about her hopeful upcoming surrogacy. she meets Asha, who is the new potential surrogate, and they chat, and everyone seems to get along. They FaceTime Gerald, and he says hi to her. The lady has kids, and the kids seem to be on board, she expresses. And so they decide that as soon as all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, that they're going to move forward with the surrogacy. And then Charles and Angela are working out, and it's Charles is basically having Angela work out. So I guess he acts as her trainer, she says, and he keeps her on the ball. Charles is 61 years old, and Angela is 43 years old. And there's been a lot of talk. It's a little shady. It's a little age shaming, implying that Angela looks much older than 43. I think she's just one of those very well spoken, measured women that read more mature. And I can relate, you guys. I've been like this since I was like 6. So let's, give her a little break. Anyway, the workout was hilarious. He kind of does push her a little bit, but they have the cutest banter. And the fact that their whole love language is like the basketball talk it doesn't get old to me. I just think it's cute. So Angela starts to fill Charles in on what happened when they were in Nashville. And, she tells us that Charles is always her devil's advocate, and that's why she comes to him about these kinds of things. So she starts to tell Charles how the girls were making fun of her and how they were acting a certain kind of way, and how when she approached Porsha ran away. And he says, you know what, I don't care. It doesn't really matter. They're nothing to me, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, oh, well, wait until I tell you what they're saying about you. And she goes on to tell him what the Porsha was telling the other girls the night out by the pool. And he says, I don't care. It doesn't matter. They don't know me. And Angela says, well, I'm not happy about this, and I'm basically going to solve it. And he says, you go, girl, and show them West Side Chicago. So Porsha gets an au pair from South Africa. And Janice is there to meet this girl. And so she's a very meek, mild girl. And Portia's gotten like a cake and wants to celebrate her, and so on and so forth. They cut away to the confessional, and Portia's talking, and all of a sudden you see Dennis pulling a chair and coming in and sitting down next to her. And she says, oh no, not the honorary house husband. Well, they start talking about the whole nonsense with Drew, which isn't really nonsense to Porsha. And Dennis denies there's any relationship at all. So Porsha is like taking the high road, and she chooses to like bro out with him. And then he tries to steal a kiss, you guys. It was the weirdest, most awkward thing, but it was pretty telling to me. And then he asks what an au pair is. And she explains on the DL, as to not embarrass him, that it is a nanny that lives with you and doesn't leave. So we go to Britt and her sister Cher, and they're packing up Mama's house, and Mama's there and Grandma's there. Well, Daddy built the house in 2014, and the girls are really just not happy that Mama's selling the house. Cher's really not taking it well, and Mama's starting to argue about how, it's her decision and it's her right, and Cher's arguing back, and Grandma steps in and puts them all in check real quick. And then they decide to call their other sister Tiara, and they have a conversation about, letting go of the house and about Tiara being closer. And that's kind of a sad thing. And it doesn't seem like Cher is taking it very well. And then we go to Cynthia's previously 4th of July, now Juneteenth barbecue, and she invites a prophet named Tasha. So Cynthia's wandering around, and everything looks beautiful, but the weather is terrible. They flashed outside and it's raining. And then at one point she says, oh no, not thunder. And so it's raining. And it's supposed to be like a summer barbecue. Well, the prophet Tasha shows up, and they, introduce her to whoever is there so far. And she immediately walks in and tells Britt that she needs to focus on herself, especially when it comes to business. So Kelly shows up with her publicist Lamont, and that's kind of a little bit like, okay, well, I'm not sure that there was a +1 situation, but we're not going to judge. So they're doing the readings, and then Angela walks in, and Prophet Tasha reaches over to greet her. And as they both go to hug, a glass falls over, and all the girls make a big fuss and see it as a sign. And then they keep going back, and I think it was Shamea was getting her reading, and she was getting really upset because the girls were like interrupting her reading. And then in walks Porsha, and they had been talking about, I see a car, is it like a Porsche? And so the girls saw that as a sign as well. So then Drew finally gets there, but she says, I'm not going to have her read me in front of everybody else. I'm not there. And she just kind of walks away, and you can see her off to the side with, I'm assuming, a producer, and she's telling the producer that she's just not getting involved in that mess and that she doesn't need that kind of energy. And I don't blame her. Like, things are not feeling warm and fuzzy in this conversation, if you ask me. You could almost sense the imminent tension coming about. And then don't forget that Angela and Britt are kind of beefing. Well, of course, it comes to a head. And Britt says something about taking care of her man. And Angela says that she's in need of a good vibe. And, Britt says, you receive what you give. And she says that the prophet was spot on. And Britt says that Angela needs to use her mouth more often, implying that she is not properly taking care of her husband. And Angela says, not as much as you, with the stretch marks around it. And then goes on to call her a whore. Of course, Britt's upset. She jumps up. She starts screaming. The girls' faces are like flabbergasted. And nobody could believe that Angela's acting such a fool. Like, the party goes from 1 to 10 in a second. And the funniest part is Tasha just kind of looking around and wondering, is this the way these ladies behave all the time? So I don't like the way Angela shamed Britt. I think she was using the narrative that showed itself earlier this season to shame her. But I don't think that Britt plays fair either. And I think Britt has a chip on her shoulder, and it's no secret that I don't like her. So anyway, thank goodness Cynthia decides to play a game, but it's not a normal housewives game. Thank goodness, because if it were, you would know where this would end up. She instead decides to play a Juneteenth trivia game. And most of the girls do not know their Juneteenth trivia. Do you? Well, Juneteenth is coming up, so maybe it's time to brush up. So Cynthia decides, while all of this is going on, to pull Angela and Porsha aside, hoping that they'll resolve the things that they have to do, and not have to do it in front of the whole group. And then they kind of sort of apologize to one another, but not really. And then they decide to just kind of leave it there. And so Porsha leaves, and Cynthia tells Angela she has one more session, and she goes and gets Shamea. Well, these two are not able to solve things. It goes south really quickly. And then the Bailey Q basically ends with Kelly yet again taking handless shots. I mean, obviously this is her new trick. She's very proud of it. I think she's 2 episodes in, and she's done it every time since they were in Nashville. You go, girl. And that's basically episode 9. I don't know what my thoughts were on that one. I thought the Bailey Q could have been worse. I don't know how I feel about Prophet Tasha, but I have heard Cynthia talk about it on the podcast that she does with Crystal Minkoff. It's Humble Brag. And she really believes in this girl. And she says that, she's not the kind of a card reader or a palm reader, any of those things. She just gets energy, and that's why she calls herself a prophet. I'm not sure what the qualifications are for a prophet, so I'm not going to say anything one way or another. But I am going to tell you guys what happens in episode 10. It starts off showing Kelly moving out of her townhouse, but for now that's immaterial. The real juice comes when Shamea meets with Ralph, And Ralph says that he wanted to talk to her because they had at one point had a podcast together, and Ralph's thinking of starting another one and wants Shamea to be in on it. And then they immediately switch to Shamea wanting to know what is going on with Dennis and Drew. I'm starting to wonder what the intent was here. I don't get it. But before I could even get that far as to judge, Porsha shows up. So Shamea tells us that she's not about to get caught in any nonsense and she needs a witness to what is happening here. She wanted to make sure that she did not get accused of like going out and meeting Ralph because she's a married woman. Porsha acts like she doesn't know what the hell's going on, but listen, she sees it as a juicy opportunity to collect some tea and find out what is going on. According to a text received by Porsha, Dennis says that Drew wants to F him, but he just wants his money. So remember that, okay? Dennis said that Drew wanted to F him. Porsha asks who filed for divorce, and Ralph says that it was him. He filed first because Drew had an affair with Ty. And Ty is that woman that was on last season. I don't know much about her. I think she has a connection to like Basketball Wives or Married to Medicine or something like that. I would lie to you and say I'm going to do my research, but I'm probably not because I don't care that much. All of that to say that, boy, when it came to just like opening the floodgates, Ralph didn't hesitate for a second. I guess he wanted his screen time and he won. I mean, they kept this in, it aired. So Angela is where we go next. She owns 5 investment properties and is $2 million in debt as a result. Most of them are ready, but the price point is too high. And given the market, it's just, they're not going anywhere. Now, did you guys see the house that she previewed for Kelly? It was not in the best condition. And if it were me trying to move properties that I have that I'm trying to flip, I wouldn't be showing it to a potential buyer knowing that I'm $2 million in debt when it's not ready. It didn't say good things for Angela's standards, I guess you could say. Did you guys see the swimming pool? I mean, come on, Angela. I think some of this have been editing. I don't know. It just seemed really, really odd. But yeah, so they start talking about the baby incident and how Charles allegedly had a baby on Angela. And Angela clears it up and tells us apparently it was one of those cases where, you know, the words get misconstrued. But she does admit that Charles had instances of infidelity and that in particular, it was around the time of the Madison Square Garden incident. So who remembers this? Charles Oakley, former New York Knicks star, had a well-publicized altercation at Madison Square Garden in 2017, leading to his arrest and a ban from the arena. But he was cleared of the misdemeanor charges, and he's like a pretty successful dude. So anyway, Angela tells Shamea of her issues with Porsha and says that she hurt Porsha because she didn't want her to be a part of the group. And Shamea's feelings were also hurt that Porsha did not want her to go to the wedding. Well, Kelly is surprised that Shamea was talking behind the girl's back and thinks Angela needs to just mind her own business. Do you guys think Angela needs to mind her own business? I do. I think she's shit stirring, but she is advancing the story. And so it's really, really, really good for like a viewer, not so great for a friend. Especially, you know, when you know that those two, Shamea and Porsha, are so close. So for a new person to come in and kind of, you know, whittle them away from one another, it's not a good look for Angela. And I'm sad because so far I've loved her so much. So do you guys remember that Britt's mom was going to move in because they're kind of, she and Mike are getting ready to maybe have a baby and, you know, they want mom there full time. So they start talking about how Angela meddles in everybody's business but doesn't want anybody talking about hers. And then Mike, you know, acknowledges her, but like a man who doesn't want part of the drama, says, oh, and by the way, I reached out to Cher, and he's trying to make peace for Britt's sake. So that's good. He's going to have lunch with her and, you know, we'll see what happens. Angela invites Porsha to tennis at one of her rental properties. And they talk about how Amari got married without telling her mother, who's Amari's Angela's daughter, you'll remember. And she thinks Drew and Porsha could work things out. But then Porsha tells Angela about the dinner with Ralph. Angela brings up Shamea and the fact that Porsha was being talked about. Angela she thinks it's a lopsided friendship, she being Shamea, and that she is afraid to have a conversation with Porsha, but doesn't want to be her lapdog. And Porsha just can't believe what she's hearing. She's already in her mind going through enough, and she does not understand why this is happening. So she loses it. And when they go to the confessionals, she admits that she thought if anything ever went south with them, once they started filming or just at all, that they would band together. And so she's really confused by why Shamea was talking to Angela or anybody else. But we find out a little later, how this really went down. And Drew tells about how there's a court order that they can't tell the children that they're getting a divorce and that they've completely ceased communication since the court date. Then we see Drew talking to her life coach, and she's really upset about the rumor about the text with Dennis and about her wanting to sleep with him instead of paying him for services. And the life coach says, you got to confront it. You got to confront it. So, of course, Angela tells Drew that Porsha and Shamea were out with Ralph. So, again, advancing the storyline, but stirring some serious shit, Miss Angela. So next we see the Pampered by Porsha event. Everyone was invited, including Drew. Kind of unbelievable, but we'll see. So they all get into these beautiful nighties. I don't know which one was your favorite? I didn't really have a favorite, but I thought they were all really pretty. And I thought that Porsha did a really good job with this event. And she really did highlight her product and her brand, which, was the purpose of the event. But it kind of becomes an issue a little bit later. So she announces, Porsha thanks everyone, of course, and then she announces the reason for them being there is that she wants to treat them to massages and have amazing photos and lingerie. And then all of a sudden, you hear Drew in the confessionals talking about how she's starting to figure out that she was invited for the publicity. She's no longer a representative for her hair care, but apparently now she's invited to, endorse this product. I don't know if that's true, but it's not true. Porsha's upset that Shamea was talking about her, but she doesn't want to address it. And so Kelly sits down and tells Shamea about the exchange between Angela and Porsha. And she says, Porsha's really hurt. So Shamea's devastated to find out that she was being talked about so badly and that Porsha didn't defend her. She thinks of her as a sister after all, right? Well, then we switch gears. Lauren, Porsha's sister, leads a meditation, but Shamea can't get into it, you guys. She's not having it. She's nervous and emotional, and the other girls kind of keep glancing over, trying to stay in the moment. And then Kelly notices, and she goes over and starts talking to her. And then Portia's like, what's going on? And so she starts shushing them. Well, during the friendship circle, Kelly says she would like to, she'd like Shamea and Porsha to talk. And so they start talking, but it doesn't go well. And to me, it seems like, again, Angela is poking the bear because she wants Shamea to speak up. Well, the whole thing, even for what is supposed to be meditation in a friendship circle, goes south. And then Cynthia points out that it really makes her sad when the circle breaks up friendships and turns and looks directly at Angela. And that's how the episode ended. So for me, my takeaways were that Angela is amazing for this franchise, but not really such a great friend. And she is trying, I think what bothers me about it is that she's trying to come across as like, I'm doing this to be your friend, to help you, heal from whatever you're struggling with. But a good friend would have told her, you two really need to talk, and kind of facilitated the conversation instead of being the conduit and spinning it her way on both ends. I'm not impressed by that. My other takeaway was I may order one of those nighties, and they looked beautiful. And other than that, I'm loving Charles Oakley. I love their relationship. So that part, that stands. But I really am loving Charles Oakley's kind of just down to earth, don't give a good god darn about what the hell's going on, and the fact that there are cameras in his house. But yet he's still supporting his wife because he's filming, and there are other people on this cast who have husbands that don't want to film. So there's that. And that was episode 10. We'll move on to episode 11. Episode 11 opens with Angela and Charles going to this really cute place. It was like a rooftop place for lunch. And, this guy stays busy. He owns car washes in New York City. He is a basketball coach, and he's been doing that for years and years. And again, they're with the basketball banter, and they are really communicating by using examples, and it's just really cute. And then they say that it is their love language, which is exactly what I had said. Well, Charles doesn't think it is. And so then in the confessionals, he gives her a hard time, and the producer asks if he loves Angela. And he hems and haws, and she steps in and says something. And basically, he doesn't answer. He says, let's move on. Angela tells Charles that she needs to handle things with with her sister, given what happened with Amari. And Angela's pissed. She's upset that her sister doesn't appreciate everything that she's done. And Charles says, if it was me, I would walk away. Well, Angela's like, but it's family. And Charles says, I don't care. And she says, but it's your sister. And he says, it doesn't matter. It's going to hit the wall, and you got to put an end to it. I agree. There are times in life when, even when it's family and you want to fight so hard for the relationship, you have to just let it go, let it run its course. And if it's meant to be, then it'll be mended. But to push it and to force it, believe me, you guys, I've tried and I tried and I tried, and it just doesn't work. So I don't know which side I am on, because I am always on the side of family, and I always say that siblings are cradle to grave, and they're unlike any other relationship you'll ever have in your life, but they're also amongst the most difficult. I have known a lot of people, both near and far, that struggle with sibling relationships. And all of that to say, I also know people, my sons as an example, that are really close and have good relationships. I'm sure they have their things, but for the most part, they're pretty tight. We're a pretty tight family. So then Cynthia and Shamea meet for drinks. And I just got to say, I love when Cynthia wears the big hair wig. I think she looks the most beautiful. She looks exotic, and she's just gorgeous. And just so you know, Shamea's Balmain t-shirt will set you back about $550. So anyway, Shamea tells Cynthia that she's devastated about what's going on with Porsha. They have a long history, and she explains to Cynthia that everybody else has been pointing out how Porsha has not been a good friend. Shamea says she has always downplayed things for the sake of the friendship. And Cynthia says she can relate because she's had that type of a relationship with Nene. So a lot of speculation that the confessional in which Cynthia mentions Nene is a Easter egg, pointing us in the direction of Nene returning. It's all alleged, you guys. I have not found anything solid. I have not heard from any of my sources that are way closer to things than I am that this is happening. But nonetheless, the walls are always speaking. Well, Shamea, Porsha's mom, were friends. Did you know that? Did you know that Shamea and Porsha's mom were friends? They had been friends for a long, long time, and now they're beefing, and they haven't spoken for years. And Porsha's mom, Diane, continues to warn Porsha about Shamea. And so at one point they ask Shamea, like, well, what was the beef? And Shamea says, I'm not going to go there. So Cynthia tells her that they do have their issues, but they seem so happy together. And Shamea admits that they are. Cynthia says she wishes that she had a friend like that. And then Shamea says, well, I may be up for grabs pretty soon, possibly. Cynthia is really a good friend, you know? I wish she were my friend. So Cynthia, if you need a friend like that, I'm up for grabs. Anyhow, the next scene is they're going bowling. So who's going bowling? Well, it's Cynthia, Angela, Porsha, and Portia's ass. Yeah, Portia's ass makes a big appearance in this bowling scene. Angela wants to use bumpers. Like, is she serious? Has she never bowled? Does she not know that that's not a thing? In the confessionals, Portia says, you don't need the bumpers, girl. You too big for that. It was funny. Portia tells the girls about Pilar, asking about her papa and how they had a real family and it's really hard and that she's really going through it. She talks about how, you know, he knows that Pilar's struggling and he's not responding to her texts. And Portia says that she could admit that right now she's just not strong enough to take on the situation with Shamea. She says, I know I don't have the capacity to deal with an end to the friendship right now. She can't break up with her. Can't handle it. It's just going to send her over the edge. Well, now we have Drew talking to Mama, and Drew tells Mama that Ralph is coming after her company, both the old one that she had from years before she was with Ralph, and the new one that her attorney Tanya established post-divorce to kind of separate the assets. And then to top it off, he's trying to get Tanya recused from the case. Mama's pissed, and she points out that he's not doing anything. He's just belaboring things. He's not paying child support. And in fact, Mama and the family have had to help with the kids. Drew tells Mama about her having her access to the house restricted. I guess there's electronic doors, and he locked her out of the house. She showed up at 1 o'clock in the morning to get into her house, you guys, and he had changed the code. So she had to go to a hotel. Mama's mad about all of this and what it's doing to the children. I am too, to be honest. We'll get into that a little bit more later on. Angela and her mom have a talk, and it turns out Angela's mom has not spoken to Charles in years. Now, I didn't get this whole scene. I get that Angela's mom is really protective, but unless it was like some really demeaning form of saying you have to have your daughter clean up or something like that, I don't think it warrants not speaking to someone in years. And then out of the other side of her mouth, she says that Charles is her son and she loves him. But then she makes some age-related comment that Angela says, like, don't be shaming my husband for his age. And I don't understand the whole dynamic. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Maybe this will play out later. I don't know. So the cutest part about Callie giving her daughter Chloe driving lessons, and the most refreshing thing that I heard through that whole scene, was the fact that she was going to buy her the car, but she was really clear with Chloe that she needed to get a car that she could afford to maintain. And I loved that Chloe was like, yeah, I plan to work at the restaurants. What a great relationship those two have. I really enjoyed watching that. Well, Pastor Jeannette, Drew's mama, it's a crisis, y'all. She jumped on a plane and she flew in to help Drew because Drew's really going through it. So they sit down and they have a cocktail, and Drew tells Mama that she and Ralph are at war, but that at least they've been better co-parents than they were parents as a couple. Well, Pastor Jeannette sees things differently. And she thinks that as a mother of his children, Ralph should not be making life more difficult for her. She also thinks that the court made the wrong decision with the living conditions and didn't take the kids' mental health into account at all. She goes on to tell Drew, as Drew's starting to cry and fall apart, that the kids are out of control. Drew says she didn't realize that her kids weren't the same, and Mama says they're not even listening to me. While the realization causes her to lose it and she walks off, she says she feels like she's failing her children. It was a really sad scene. But it took a really strong mama to have that conversation with her daughter. And it took a really good mama to jump on a plane and come to mama's rescue. So sometimes mamas have to tell you things you don't really want to hear, but you need to hear. Well, Porsha and Shamea finally meet for lunch. So we think we're finally going to have the, conversation that we've all been waiting for. Let's see. Porsha says she's been hearing from everybody else how Shamea feels. And Shamea apologizes and says she's very careful with her friendships and apologizes for not bringing her feelings directly to Porsha. But then Shamea gets to the brass tacks and tells Porsha that she doesn't appreciate the way Porsha treats her and is not taking it well. And she says it's creating an uncomfortable situation. And she is upset that her expressing herself is uncomfortable for Porsha. But then in the confessionals, she explains that she just wants Porsha to have her back, like she's always had Porsha's back. Shamea tells Porsha that she feels like she's being dismissive. And just as this is happening, Porsha starts to have these nonverbals and, clanking and clinking and sighing and things. And they're making her feel like Porsha's dismissing her feelings. So she wants to talk about it. Shamea says it also hurts her that Porsha's mom is saying that she shouldn't be friends with her, and that Porsha said that is a reason that she sometimes pulls back. Shamea tells Porsha that she only wishes that their relationship was the same on camera as it is off camera. And, Porsha says they're going to have to pay me more money for that. What is going on with Porsha? The body language, the nonverbals coming from Porsha indicate to me that what she's saying is true. This seems to me like one of those classic cases of poor communication by two people who really love each other. Well, my favorite part was when Shamea breaks the fourth wall, left and right, talking about how she just wants Porsha to be the same way off the show and on the show. And I don't know if it was that Shamea didn't give a shit and broke the fourth wall and was just talking to her literally as a friend from the heart in that moment, but Porsha loses it. So she takes off and then she composes herself and she comes back and she tells Shamea and the server that she thinks they should get their food to go. And Shamea says, I hate that we're leaving here without resolve. Well, the ironic part is that as the food is being boxed, they work things out, you guys. Porsha says she's really just trying to make it through, and Shamea says that she understands that. And that, that she's often masks her feelings as well. But she wants her to find the bandwidth to care enough about the things that hurt Shamea. And that Shamea doesn't want to feel dismissed anymore. Well, the nonverbals kind of continue, and then Porsha starts jingling silverware and says, well, then tell me what I can do. Well, I would have been pissed in that moment, but it's pretty obvious that it was kind of a nervous reaction and that she was having somewhat of an awakening. So Shamea says, when I talk to you, I don't want you to tell me to stop. I want you to listen. And they hold hands and they look into each other's eyes, and it looks like they make up. I mean, the scene ends emotionally. Porsha says she doesn't want to break up. Shamea, I hope this squashed it all, and I hope they move forward, you guys, and they get matching tattoos. And Shamea, in closing, those jeans though, girl, holy moly. Can somebody tell me where those jeans came from? Not that I would ever wear them, but who knows, maybe in another country on a really sexy dinner date with my husband. Something to think about. As the second episode of the Memorial Day weekend finishes, I just wanted to let you guys know that I will be dropping another episode, catching us all up on the Valley. We have Bravo news. We have a lot of Bravo news, actually. And I have food and travel, guys. I went to Arizona and I'm going to tell you all about it. So join me for the next episode of the Living on the Verge podcast. Thanks for listening.